My name is Angie Dorame Behrns. I was born in the Sawtell area of West Los Angeles in a two-story farmhouse on the corner of Olympic and Federal. Now you have to understand, the sides of Olympic were not paved. They were dirt roads. Just the center of Olympic was paved. And that was 86 years ago.
Wow.
Well, I grew up, I lived in, where I lived, it was a barrio back then, but everything's gentrified, and it's sad because the community has been destroyed by man's insatiable appetite for wealth. So most of the people that lived in that area no longer live around here. It's too expensive. But my dad is Native American. He's Gabrielino Tongva. My mother was Mexican, but we were raised more Indian. We were not Catholic, so I couldn't really identify with the Latinos that were our neighbors because we were more into the Native American culture. We'd go to San Gabriel once a month, go to the mission, and we'd go look at the grave sites of my great-great-great-grandmother. But my history on my dad's side, we're really Playa Vista, a villager, Kawashna. That was our land, and we never sold our land and we never gave it away. And we were all, my ancestors were taken to the mission and used for slave labor. My ancestors are the ones that built the mission. But somehow or other, my great-grandmother, my great-uncles, they moved back to where they were originally from. They didn't move to Playa Vista, but they moved we called it Palms by the Bayona wetlands. But I used to wonder, what are they doing here? And all the rest of the Indians, they all live in San Gabriel, because we would go visit them and we knew. And one uncle did live in, an aunt stayed in San Gabriel, and I used to wonder, why do they live here and all the rest of them live in San Gabriel? That's because they came back to where they were originally from. But I didn't think of it until I got older. That's what happened. And so I was raised more with Indian heritage. My mother used to tell my dad that he was superstitious because he still had a lot of the old customs. Like my great uncles, we don't have photographs of them. They would not allow us to take photos of them.
Not even your grandparents, or?
No, they wouldn't. On my dad's side, we don't have pictures because they wouldn't allow us to take pictures of them. And so there were a lot of, I wrote a poem, there was a conference, and I wrote a poem that I wrote, and it's called I Know Who I Am. And I describe in that poem how we'd go to Topanga Canyon. What are we doing in Topanga Canyon? But it was because of my dad. We didn't go to Alvera Street or downtown LA. We'd go to Topanga, and we'd go to, they called it El Rancho de los Tapias, because the Tapia family had owned this ranch. And there was an old craftsman house where we had more fun. And they were a Mexican family, Spanish or whatever, and they had lost that land during the Depression. They couldn't pay the taxes. So my dad would take us there, and he had a nursery on corner of Federal and Olympic, and he would have us fill these little gunny sack bags with oak leaves and fill his little trunk. So he wasn't just going there for nothing.
Right.
And so then he'd bring those oak leaves back to our where we lived, and he would buy soil, and maybe the following month we'd go to the wetlands. Now you have to understand, Bayona Creek was not paved then, it was all dirt. Right. And you'd drive down on the side, out through Jefferson, drive down, those same little sacks, fill them up with sand, bring them back. My mother would wash the salt water out of them. and mix it with the oak leaves and soil, and that's what he would use to plant his,
Oh wow.
you know. So there's a lot of history, but the Tapia now it's called Tapia Park.
Right.
But see that, in a way, now that I'm older, it really hurts me to understand that the Tapias owned all this land and it was taken away from them by the United States government because they couldn't pay the property taxes. See, to me, that's wrong. These were the original inhabitants of California, one of the original that
And the Tapias were Californios?
they were Mexican, or Spanish. I don't know what they were, but we knew the Tapias.
Yeah.
And so they lost their land, which is really sad. It upsets me. I don't think it should have. I think the government should have made allowances for the original landowners, because they're not the only ones.
Yeah.
There's many that were, because see, the Indians, we weren't allowed to own land.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that.
No.
We weren't allowed. And when they found gold, what happened is the people from back east started coming to California, and they would push the Mexicans that were already here. By that time, we're intermarried with the Mexicans. If we're not intermarried, some of us are saying we're Mexicans because the Indians were the last men on the totem pole, let's say. So by that time, the Anglos are coming from back east. They're pushing the Mexicans and the Indians off the land. We couldn't fight. The Mexicans couldn't fight for their land. You couldn't.
Just like the late 1800s, right?
Yeah. And so what happened is the Indians became landless, and a lot of Mexican families became landless. And it's a sad story, but anyway.
You mentioned how your family, you guys would go to Topanga. Like, what else?
What
else was your family life like as far as growing up?
We'd go, many times. I remember we used to go also to a rancho, Boca de Santa Monica, because a lady, I think her name was Angela. They'd have big gatherings, and all the old families, the Mexican families, the Indians, would all get together. They all knew each other. The old original families knew each other. So we'd have, it was like a big potluck. Just like I explained, we'd go to San Gabriel, the same thing. Everybody took food. And you knew who got married, who got divorced, who died, who had a baby. All the gossip was.
And Rancho Boca de Santa Monica, where's that more or less?
That's Santa Monica Canyon.
Okay.
Yeah, and I could draw a picture of an oak tree that my brother and I used to climb. I was about 5 years old. I could remember it it's like a photograph up here.
Right.
And one day I hope maybe I will draw a picture of it. But so we held, for instance, when we went, I remember one time we were in the Tapia property, and we found a mortar. And my dad got so upset. You get that? Where did you get that from? And take it back, and we had to bury it back where we found it, because see, they believed, my dad's belief is, if that was a funeral object and we brought it home, that we could pass away or die.
Right. It's not as bad.
It was and so you just didn't do that. It was a no. And so my dad had a lot of. It was his culture. It wasn't superstition. That was his culture.
Yeah. Were things a lot looser back then as far as like entering someone's property? So would it be okay for you to just walk and
Yeah, it wasn't you didn't have lawsuits or any of that stuff. It was a community.
So you could, like, for example, the Tapia, you could walk through and play in their trees and
Well, the Tapias by that time didn't own it anymore. It was like abandoned, but there were a lot of apple trees. I remember it was full of little frogs, and it was very different. Today you can't do that. My dad couldn't go there and fill his little bags up with the leaves of the oak trees. He'd get arrested.
Right.
So we had more freedom back then, a lot more freedom. But there were just certain customs. Now, my grandmother, his mother, was Tongva, right? Was born here in California, but she got tuberculosis, so they took her to Arizona. That's where she met my grandfather, was Apache and Yaqui. So she married my grandfather, and she stayed there. So my dad was actually born in Arizona, but he came out here when he was young. He actually drove his grandmother to California on a wooden plank road through the desert. There wasn't any paved roads. They were wooden planks in a Model D Ford or Model A Ford, whatever it was. He drove his grandmother out here. He says, I was 13 years old. I said, what happened if another car was coming? He says, oh, you just pick up the car, take it off the tracks, and then when the car passed, you'd put it back on. But
what were your you mentioned your dad, what were your parents like? What was your dad like, and your mom, and what was some things you remember the most, and
well, my
about
dad,
their personality or
my dad didn't talk much about. He didn't like to talk about his lifelong experiences. He'd just say, "Oh, what do you want to know for?" And but somehow or other, I would get. My brother says, "How do you know all this stuff?" Somehow or other, I would sit next to my dad, and he'd eventually. My dad drank a lot, to be honest with you. He had. I'll tell you this story. It's really sad. I recorded my uncle when he told it. I told you how my dad was born in Arizona because his mother went there because she had tuberculosis, so they took her to Arizona, and she married my grandfather. My mother died in Arizona. She's buried in a little town called Douglas. My dad, and I remember my dad showing this in Ripley's Believe It or Not, that if the Mexicans were always buried with their feet facing Mexico. But if you weren't Mexican, your feet were facing the opposite way. So that's the way my grandmother was buried. She wasn't Mexican. But after she died, I've got to tell you this story. I recorded my uncle. My grandfather was just so distraught. He took his kids and he was going to start a new life. So he bought some cattle and pigs and chickens, and he set up an area, because you had homestead then. You didn't pay for it. If you were improving the property, you could do that. But I asked my uncle, I said, yeah, we lived there. I said, but in Arizona, there's no trees, there's nothing. What did you do? He says, no, they were like canvas. That was our house, like a tent. And I said, well, what did you sleep on? No, we had metal beds, but they didn't have mattresses. They were just iron springs. My uncle was describing this, and I said, well, what did how did you live? He says, I don't remember. Your dad was 5 and I was 7, but I'll tell you what happened. Some Apaches came riding on their horses hard, and he says, and the horses were all wet, sweating, and there must have been about 20 of them. And they just looked around and they saw we had troughs, he called them troughs, for water to water the animals. And they watered their horses and they washed their faces, and they didn't say much, and they just left. But I knew they were riding hard because the horses were, they were wet. And he says about 15, 20 minutes later, the U.S. cavalry shows up.
Oh, wow.
And he says, I was scared. I jumped under the bed, but your dad he went out there and talked to them. And they asked him if they were, what they knew the Indians had been there. Where did the Indians go? And he says, oh, your dad pointed to where they went. And they asked him some questions. He says, I don't know. I was scared. I jumped under the bed. I was hiding. He says, but you know what those blankety blanks did before they left? They killed every cow, every pig, every chicken, and they got the trough and they hid it. So we didn't have, and we were just there.
Wow.
And he says, when my father came back, he says he had a flatbed, and he had gone to buy provisions, and 2 horses and a flatbed. And he says, when you bought provisions, you bought big sacks of flour, sugar. And my grandfather started crying, and he put them in the cart, and he says, we're leaving here, because he had nothing left.
Right.
And so he left. So my dad was very prejudiced.
Because of that.
Because of that. That's only one.
Well,
I won't go on. There's a lot of other things I
pretty
could.
intense. I mean,
Yeah, because he was a little. There's a lot of other stories.
So I think that's why a lot of times he didn't want to talk about things, because he was just like.
He was hurt. He was
hurt. Yeah.
I'll tell you another story that I will tell. I don't talk about a lot of them. I'll sit here and start crying. But my grandfather remarried a woman, and she was an abuser. And she didn't treat because these were children from his first marriage, she didn't treat them that well. My dad ran away from home when he was 10 years old. He jumped the railroad train because he lived in a town where they would mine copper and the copper, there was trains going into Mexico. So my dad jumped the train because he was going to get out of there. He had relatives. He wanted to come back to California. 10 years old. Think about that. Jumps a train, he says, and when he jumped the train, there were two cowboys, Anglo cowboys, and somebody was sitting at the corner. It was a boxcar. But this guy that's sitting in the corner is all covered up, his head, he had a hat on, covered up with a poncho. And my dad jumped on the boxcar, and they're cowboys, he called them cowboys, got my dad by the collar, and he says, you blankety blank, or throwing you, called him racial slurs. And they were going to throw him off the boxcar. He's 10 years old. These guys are big. Well, the man in the corner stood up, and he was an African American. And my dad said his arms were huge. And he looked at these guys. He says, before you throw him off, you come here and you throw me off.
Oh, wow.
And they let my dad go, and they go, no, it's cool, whatever.
Yeah.
And so my dad went and sat next to this man that had helped him.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was a very interesting story.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
My mother was Mexican, but she came here because the same thing happened to them. Everything was taken from them, and they came here during the Mexican Revolution. But they were, I don't know if they were originally from Spain. I just have her genealogy from Milan, Italy. And then they went to Jerez, Zacatecas, and her father had a ranch. The same thing, she said, it got to the point where the revolutionaries and they were all bad.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather says, we're going to the north, because they already had family living here. And so I said, well, how did you cross the border? She says, they sent us money. We hired a buggy, and we got all dressed up, and they said, go.
Yeah.
And
because back then the border was a little more relaxed than it is now, obviously.
And she said, but my mother, by the time she was 21, she had her own grocery store.
Oh, wow.
Ambitious woman.
Where was that at?
And that was in Douglas, Arizona.
Oh, okay.
But then when they came to California, my dad drank a lot, and he'd go across the border, because this is a border town I'm talking about. So my mother wanted to get him out of that environment, so they moved back to California, because my dad's relatives, they all lived here.
Yeah.
And my mother, believe it or not, opened a Mexican restaurant on San Vicente and Wilshire in Westwood.
Oh, wow.
She bought a tortilla machine, but it wasn't, you had to go like this, But the inspector closed them down. Yeah, there was a lot of prejudice.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Closed them down, but she was in business with her cousin. So I won't go into any of the details. But anyway, her cousin opened Juanita's on Olvera Street. I think it's still there. And they would sell the little taquitos. That was their specialty. Right. My mother, the tortilla machine was my mother's, but my dad got drunk and gave it away, and my mother said, I give up. I can't do anything with this man. I'm going to stay home now and take care of my children and raise them.
How did they meet? Or
well, they met in that town when my mother came over across the border in that town called Douglas, Arizona. It's a border town.
Okay. Like were they like did like in the same line of work or just in the same town by chance?
It was just the same town, you know, and they had activities and you know, to get my dad. He never said he was. He never would say he was Indian. If they'd ask him, "What are you?" he'd say he was Mexican.
Yeah.
Because he grew up in Arizona with the, you know, the Latino community, and I have programs because I keep everything. No, and when they discovered gold, the first governor of California put a bounty on Indians. It's really sad. So they paid from $2 to $5 for every Indian that was killed. So a lot of Indians said they were would say they were Mexican.
Right.
I remember I met a lady, I think she was Hopi, and she told me, I married a man from Douglas. I said, really? What is his name? I have a program, an old program from Fiestas I used to have. Maybe his name's on that. And she says, but my husband forbid me to say I was Indian. I always had to say I was Mexican. She had to say she was Mexican. But my dad came after a while. He, you know, when he would go back to Arizona to visit, he'd take us to the reservations. I probably know more about the Dahotohaman than they know, because my dad would. And then there's a big mission, and well, they used to call them papagos then. And there's a big church, and my dad would say, "See that steeple? It's not finished. You're going to finish it."
Yeah.
And I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to come and take me away from. I was petrified.
Yeah.
I thought I was they were going to put me to work. You know, I just saw pictures of that mission, and it doesn't have one steeple. It's just flat, and that's my dad would point at that and say, "You're going to have to finish that church."
So, like, when you like, how early? When you were growing up, like, how early did you know that you were Indian?
Oh, yes.
Or from the gig, from the.
Oh yeah, we always know. When I was in the 3rd grade, but you weren't told not to say you were Indian, but you just knew you.
Yeah.
You didn't, you know, you just knew.
Right.
But I remember in the 3rd grade when they'd talk about the missions, I wanted to raise my hand so bad and tell them, we go to the missions you know, once a month, and go to the cemetery.
Right.
And. But even that story is very sad, because my daughter wanted to know a little bit about our history. They were having an event at the San Gabriel Mission, and I called our chief. I said, Anthony, are you going to be at the event they're having at the mission? He says, no, we had issues with the priest, and at this time we're staying away. But he says, Angie, if you want to go ahead and go. And I wanted to take my daughter because I wanted to show her where we would go when I was a little girl, you know, and where my ancestors are buried. I wanted to show her. So
when you were in like elementary and, let's say, high school, did you have did you have any challenges as far as what people who knew you were Indian, or did people know?
No, my friends in high school. Now you have to understand, I went to University High School at that time. I'll say it the way it is.
Yeah.
All the rich people went there, and I lived on the other side where the working class lived there. But most of my friends were Jewish.
Yeah.
I didn't hang around with the Latinos. Most of my friends were Jewish, but that's because I wasn't Catholic. I didn't go, you know, I didn't have the same customs.
Religion,
different customs, but I didn't know why. My mother had a big picture like this of Moses with the 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
What was she doing with a picture of Moses and the 10 Commandments? And we didn't celebrate the Cinco de Mayo or the 16th of September or the Mexican holidays, whatever they were. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
We didn't celebrate Christmas with a Christmas tree.
Yeah. Right. But did a lot of Mexicans think that you were Mexican?
I don't know what they thought. You didn't think, you know, you just didn't discuss it. Everybody just accepted you. If you were Japanese, so big deal. You were Japanese. If you're Italian, you're Italian. If you're a Jew, you're a Jew. Nobody ever paid attention.
Right.
Like today, everybody's distinguishing themselves.
Yeah.
You know, we were just one big pot, like a big pot of beans. Everybody was in there together, and you didn't distinguish one from the other.
You said like like in school, like you were kind of like it was kind of a rule not to tell people you were Indian or really.
Yeah.
At what point? When did you start becoming more assertive with your indigenous identity?
I think I started in the 80s. I started attending the tribal council meetings in San Gabriel. My brother says, you know, they have meetings. We should go. But I always knew I was an Indian. You know, I knew we had our, you know, I know it was also in 1970 when they paid us $664 for, there were 18 treaties that were never ratified. So you had to prove that you were Tongva. So that's when we, you know, well, let's get the death certificates, the birth certificates, you know. And then Tommy Temple was alive then, and he was the historian. And my sister wrote him a letter. We'd like to know, are we really Diagino or are we Gabrielino?
Yeah.
Because one of my dad's aunts had registered them as Diagino.
And with Diagino, is that a different tribe?
That's from San Diego, Pachanga Pala.
Oh, okay.
Could be Pachanga Pala, Kumaye, one of those from San Diego. So, because they were establishing the reservation, so she wanted land on the reservation, so she said she was Diagino, but so Tommy Temple wrote, my sister has the original letter, I have the copy. He says, you are Gabrielino, you are Gabrielino.
Right.
And through the research we found out we're from Guashna, Playa Vista.
Wow.
And I have the documents with my Indian ancestors' name, and then they were baptized with Christian names.
Right.
Eulalia Gulian was Mexican lady, she baptized the Indians with Mexican names.
Yeah.
Okay, her husband was Mariano, I don't know. San Marino was given to her, but ladies didn't have clout in those days, so they named it after her husband, San Marino. But it originally was Rancho San Pascual, and that's where my grandmother was born.
And how did you, when did you start getting involved in the activism for, you know, because obviously you're one of the key persons, if not the key person who helped revive the Curuvungna Springs. When did you start kind of your journey with the activism?
I started my journey, I went to University High.
Which are where the springs are at?
Yeah, where the springs are at. But what happened is, my husband was in the movie business, and I said, oh, Don, I went to the most beautiful school. It's the most beautiful campus. It's a historical site, you know. It's where my people once lived. And I'm telling my husband, he's not from California. He didn't want to go to my reunion. So I said, you've got to come. You may get a script you want to. So I took my husband. We went to it was a picnic-like reunion. When we walked down to the gate, what I saw was disgusting. It was like they had stabbed me in the gut.
Yeah.
The area it was all graffiti. There was
I remember, it was like a dump
benches,
site.
Yeah, and they were using it for a dump. I was so upset, I can't tell you. I called my brother and he says, well, Angie, there aren't going to be any more springs. I said, what? He says, oh, the Barrington Plaza is going to get a building variance, and they're going to tap into the table water and the springs will be dried up.
And about what year is this?
That's in the early 90s.
Okay.
It was 1990. Maybe it was 89, 90 at that time.
Yeah.
So then that's how I got involved. That's when I went on the warpath. And my brother, so I started attending meetings. And little by little, that's another history. Oh my gosh. It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But I met a school teacher. She was my mentor. And, you know, I think I had leadership qualities, but I didn't realize. Because when I was in school, I'd always get, you know, elected for president of this or vice president, you know, or
yeah.
I was always holding some sort of, but I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. And so this teacher from the Brentwood homeowners, she saw that in me. And she says, you're Tongva? You got a roll number? I said, yes. And I said, yes. She says, oh my gosh, she made friends with me. And so it was mostly Loretta and I that fought the developer. We were the ones that went to the meeting, but we had met with other Tongva, tribal council members. But Loretta and I were the key players. And it was very difficult. I don't even want to get into the
that could be in the next video.
the details. But anyway, so that's how I got involved. And at that time, I was going to the tribal council meetings. So they said there's a few that live out on the west side. Contact them. So that was Al Lasso's. Right. He had gone to uni, but he had lived. You don't know this. Yeah. Where the Barrington Plaza is, I hated the Barrington Plaza because that was a barrio.
Yeah.
And it was like Chavez Ravine. They kicked them all out. Yeah. And gave them peanuts for their property, so they couldn't buy around here. Right. So they moved to Inglewood or wherever, because they couldn't buy here. Right. And I hated the Barrington Plaza because I knew the Diaz's, I knew the Hernandez's, I knew the Marsden that lived.
And what was like the economic situation, like the poverty? Because we were talking with Frank from Santa Monica, Casillas from Santa Monica,
oh, yeah.
And he was saying during, I guess, someone had offered them to buy the house, but they couldn't afford the house.
Yeah.
Back then,
Yeah.
How was the situation over in West LA?
Well, that's what happened. That's why they call that Japantown. The Mendozas, the Patinos, the Ariases, the Garcias, they all had land property on Sawtell Boulevard. They had nurseries, the Robles on Purdue and Olympic, my dad on Federal and Olympic. Right. We had nurseries. They were gardeners, Mexican gardeners, most of them. But that history is not told. My dad, do you know where Best Buys is?
Yeah.
During the Depression, I'll show it to you after this interview. I have pictures of my dad with the Ayashi family, a Japanese family that owned it was called La Flor de Pico.
Right.
When they got sent to camp, Frank Montoya bought it, and he ran La Flor de Pico nursery. I have photos of my dad.
Oh, wow.
In the little truck that he used to drive for the Florida Pico. I have his paycheck, $10 a week.
Oh, wow.
But he had a job during the Depression. Most people didn't.
Right.
And so we've been around for a long time, Yeah. It's on my dad's side.
When did you finally secure, or consider it saved, I guess? What did you have to do?
Well, what I did is, in fact, the very first thing I did was I registered it as a sacred site with the Native American Heritage Commission. You can't there's a lot of sites, they say, oh, this is a sacred site, but they're not registered. But I registered this, and I had an archaeologist friend help me. Because it is a burial site, and it's an archaeological site. But LA Unified did a lot of things illegally that they shouldn't have until we came in there. And then they started going by the rules.
What are are there any other registered sacred sites in the West LA area?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I know because I registered them as a sacred site. Right. I have the documents. And then we fought the Barrington Plaza, and Loretta used to tell me, make notes. I said, Loretta, I speak from the heart. I may not remember afterwards what I say, but I don't need notes. This is my culture. Yeah. This is my history. I said, LA Unified doesn't care about me. They don't care about our history. I said, but I do, and I'm going to fight. And she says, well, that's what you have to get up and say. But at that time, there were a lot of Latinos in the that were council members. And I would look at them and I said, this is your history as well as mine. This isn't only Indian history. This is also Mexican history. And they backed me up.
Yeah.
They backed me up.
Over your years of activism, what have been some of the challenges or obstacles that you've faced?
Well, the obstacles mostly that I faced was meeting with the attorneys from the Barrington Plaza. Talk about dishonest people. Yeah. You know, I wasn't born yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't say, when I'm around people, a lot of times I'm quiet, I don't say much.
Yeah.
But when I have something to say, I'll say it. But what was really sad was that, you know, my great-great-great-grandfather was a German, so I'm, you know, mixed. But I identify as Native American more than I do, you know, Mexican. But the people that I really had issues with were usually Anglo people. Even recently, the area, the city, every 30 years, they change the demographic, you know, and the zoning of the area. And right now they're West LA. Do you know that Sawtell area is going through that?
Yeah.
And I met this attorney, he came to the Springs, and he asked me if I'd go to the council meetings, and I've been real busy. And I said, well, I don't know if I can make it, but I'll try to make it. And Bob, the man that runs the Springs, oh, you should get to know him. Bob Ramirez is his name. But he's a descendant of the Yorbas. You know who the Yorbas are?
No, I don't.
Yorba Linda, he was one of the Españoles, biggest ranchero. Yorba Linda's named.
Yeah.
I'm the one that told Robert his background, because he said, I know we're married at the mission, but you know, we're intermarried with Indians, you know, but they want to be Spaniards.
Yeah.
So he laughs now, he says, I'm Tongva like everybody else.
Yeah.
I spoke at a council meeting, and I told this attorney, I don't like to name names, but I told this attorney, you know, there's a man from West LA, and I said, he doesn't like Indians. And he says, is it so-and-so? And I said, yes. He knew who I was talking about just by the description. So I go to this meeting, and they're going to vote to try to declare the Spring side as a historical landmark for the West Side. And we're trying to take over. There's 2 bungalows that haven't been used for 13 years. We want those. We want them out of there. So this attorney asked me if I could speak, and I didn't know if Robert, the president of the Springs, was going to go there, right? But he showed up at the meeting. So Robert gets up and speaks. I don't want to speak. I said, I'll go there and sit, but I don't want to say anything. So what does Robert do? Say, oh, and this is Angie, the founder. So I had to get up and speak. But do you know that before this started, that one man that I told you, that I had told this attorney, he doesn't like Indians. You know, he walked out of the meeting because he knew Robert and I were going to, or Robert was going to speak. Yeah. And he didn't vote on the issue.
Recently?
Yes, this was last Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't going to, because I told this attorney, I will not speak, I will go there for support. But I'm burned out right now.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of work. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And so, but I ended up speaking. But then, you know, some Oriental people, I went to uni too. I said, oh, well, do you know Kenny Naramura? Did you know, the Hashimoto's and Nakamura, you know? And she said, yeah, you know, so we kind of hit it off. Yeah. But Robert and I spoke, so I think it's going to pass. Yeah.
Good. And this is for what again? This is for the
Springs.
Oh, for the rezoning issue or something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known you now for like almost about 20 years. I want to
say
something like that, close to it at least. What's been some of your motivation and your fuel and hobby, taking care of yourself to doing this important work?
My motivation is mostly to, you know, I was just reading. There's only 2,000 of us descendants from the original Tongva left. That's really sad. That is sad. That's government statistics. 2,000 descendants left. There aren't very many. And so what I've always fought, you know, we were not allowed to dress the way we were used to. We couldn't even tattoo ourselves. Now, how do you think I feel when I see some white blonde girl all tattooed, when they would punish us, beat us because we had tattoos? How do you think? I resent it. I don't like it. I don't think they should be tattooed. Right. You know, it's okay if they do it, but we couldn't do it.
Right.
You know, things like that, and that's what frustrates me. It's a frustration. It's not an anger. It's a frustration.
Yeah.
And so my big thing is, hey, let's try to keep our culture and our history alive. I know there aren't that many of us, but you know, like my kids are pretty in tuned. They know.
So what are some of the ways that you've taken care of yourself in terms of keeping your
It's
energy
really
and your spirit positive?
Yeah, it's a very difficult. Like Tongva Park, for instance. You know, you were there with me. I was instrumental.
Yeah.
It's named Tongva Park. But you know what? The newspaper wanted to write an article on it. I said, no, I work behind the scenes. I'm not here for publicity.
Yeah.
I told them that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that.
No.
They came to me after the meeting, and they never quote you. When you say something, they write what they want to write anyway, and that's why I don't like to be. And I said, no, I work behind them. But you don't hear that Miguel and I, nobody took a picture of us. He escorted me up when I spoke. He was there. Nobody knows that because of me, I sat there from 6 o'clock in the afternoon to 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I wanted to leave. Paulina's the one that said, no, you can't, you know. But I was ready to walk out. They did that on purpose because they thought I was going to leave, and I was like...
Yeah, I know. I remember, yeah.
You know, you talk about burnout.
Yeah.
With all these meetings with attorneys, the Barrington Plaza fighting, I was tired.
Yeah.
And driving, if it weren't for Loretta, she would drive a lot of times to downtown LA to the Plum Commission, the council meetings, LA Unified Board meetings. It took a lot. I don't know. I have a lot of energy. Even I'm 86 years old. Even now, I have a lot of energy.
A lot of energy.
And
like for other activists, like myself or other Native activists coming up, like what are some tips you would give us as far as keeping our spirit and energy and our mind positive and healthy?
Well, the one thing I suggest is don't let anger dominate your goals. Don't be angry. Just the facts. That's all you need are the facts. Just tell it the way it is. You don't have to be angry. You can respect one another, support one another. But you know what? If you get tired or burned out, space yourself. I tell my granddaughter, you know what? I'm going to come home. My mind, I have to clear it of everything. I got to think about others. So I'll start drawing or reading or, get my mind off of the issues of today, right. Because it'll knock you cold. You know, it's hard. It's work.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very mostly spiritually taxing.
And you can't. And another thing, a nation divided is a nation conquered. Don't attack one another. If you have one issue, your friend has one issue, and maybe she or he sees it another way, don't put them down.
Yeah.
Don't put them down. Lift them up. All of us need to be lifted up, not down. If you don't agree with them, you don't have to say bad things about that person. Just, lift them up. Just remember, lift them up. Don't get angry. Lift them up.
Well, what are some of the as far as like maybe for Tongvas or for just Native people in general, like in LA doing a lot of the activism, what do you think are some of the primary goals that we need to focus on from your perspective?
Well, my goal is education. Get education. Forget getting married at 18, these girls at 18, 19. Get an education first. And then go on, and that's my thing.
Right.
Well, don't forget where you come from. Don't forget who you are. You don't have to wear a T-shirt. A lot of us do. I'm Native. I have one. But just live your life. If you're having a conversation and something comes up about cultures or something, we'll say, yeah, well, I'm Native American, or my mother was Mexican and my dad was an Indian. But you shouldn't be ashamed of it.
Right.
You know, I think as a child, I think I was ashamed. That's why I was always,
Right.
you know. I remember my mother spoke, they call it Spanglish.
Yeah.
You know, my dad didn't speak Spanish to us, just total English. He had no accent. My mother had an accent. You know what she asked me once? My mother was, I'll show you pictures of my mother. You've seen pictures of my mother.
Yeah.
She's beautiful. And my mother said, you know, Angie, I was a teenager. She says, do you think I should go to school and get rid of my accent? I said, Mother, your accent is beautiful. It's part of you. Because my mother, when she was with Spanish people, she would talk, you know, and then when she was with Mexicans, she spoke like, you know, Mexican. But she didn't speak Spanish to us. She spoke Spanglish.
Did your dad, did he retain any of his Tongva language at all? Or?
No, we lost it. By that, they'd whip us. We couldn't speak our language because the priests were afraid we'd get together and we'd kind of plan revolts or jump them.
Right.
So they would not let us speak our language. So think about it. Put yourself in my position. My ancestors lost their language. We were made to speak Spanish. Then the Americans come and you can't speak Spanish anymore. You have to speak English. That's the way it was when I was in school. You didn't. The Mexicans that were Mexican, they don't know how to speak Spanish because they were taught don't speak Spanish in school.
Yeah.
See, my last name is so unusual as Dorame, so it wasn't Gonzalez or Sanchez. So even the teachers didn't know what we were or what, you know. They wouldn't put it. See, they used to. This is the honest to goodness truth. I went to Doris Sterry on Sawtell Boulevard. What they did is they called it the dumb room. You know who went into the dumb room? All the Latinos, the Hernandez, the Sanchez, the Garcias. This is the truth. And you know what they did in that room? They had Cecil the pig. They grew carrots, corn, celery. I'm talking about the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Finally, somebody, I think, took them to court, and
I think Frankie Duarte, who we interviewed a month or so ago, I think he was mentioning that too.
Yeah, this is the truth. But see, because my name wasn't Hernandez or Sanchez or Gonzalez, they didn't know what we never were put in those rooms. Although we were dark, my sister's lighter than I am, but my brother, you know, my mother had like two separate families, but that's the way it was, you know.
Angie, I wanted to ask you, as far as like the land goes, you know, and taking the native land from back then in the 1900s and stuff, and then to today with gentrification, do you see that as two separate things, or is it just one long struggle?
It's one long struggle. You know, it's all a struggle together, you know. But I do resent them taking our lands from us. I really, listen, not only us, but the Mexicans. You know what? A lady came to my house. I have a book in the book. You didn't see my books. It's all the Spanish land grants. And this lady says, "Can I come to your house?" She's I think she's related to some of the old Santa Monica families. She says, "I want to see if you have anything on my family." You know, she came and looked through it. She got so excited. She found her family in that book. She says, "You know, Angie, we owned Bunker Hill to Olvera Street, and we have nothing today."
Wow.
And she says it was all the taxes.
Yeah.
I think that was an excuse for the government to take. I know Michael Lavia, I don't know if you know him, he's a flute player from our tribe.
Yeah.
His grandmother owned Brentwood. I forgot what the rancho was called. Same thing. Lost it all. Taxes.
It seems like that's kind of it's a pattern too. You know, they say the gentrification is the new form of colonialism. Because even like, for instance, in Venice, I know they had this thing called the PACE program, which is proactive court enforcement, and they would ticket people, and then like they couldn't people couldn't afford the taxes on
Yeah.
the bill there, and eventually kicked them out and took their property.
Right,
Among
right.
other things, some other harassment.
It's the same thing. But you know, I also when my dad died, there was. Do you know? I think I've asked you the Abelar family. Did you know David Abelar?
I don't think the name
They're Mexican. They're Mexican family, but they were from Santa Monica. And when my dad died, Rita Abelar said, "Do you know that my mother-in-law told me this story, that there was a bunch of Indians that lived on Strand, and they drank a lot, and you know, they were just like loitering. They wouldn't hire them, you know." And she said, because they were building up, you know, Abbott County was building up Venice, and they became a sight sore because they were getting a lot of tourists in Venice, and that the government came in. Her mother-in-law told her this, and that the government came in and got all those Indians in a bus and took them away. I said, "Where did they take them?" She says, "I don't know." And my mother-in-law always wondered, where did they take those poor people?
Yeah.
And I asked a friend of mine from UCLA, and he says, "You have to find out who the Indian agent was back then, and you have to go through the notes." But do you know how much research that would take?
Yeah.
And then it's crazy, you know. El Tejon, I don't know if you're familiar with El Tejon. That was supposed to be our reservation. You know who owns it? The Beal family. He was the Indian agent that stole that from us. That was supposed to be a reservation. He sold part of it to the Chandlers. You know who the Chandlers are? They're the ones that used to own the LA Times. Filthy rich.
Oh, wow.
To this day, Chandler own it, and the Beals still own it. They're cattle farms, because I saw it on Yule Hauser. And see, that's when I get upset.
Yeah. That's some of your fuel right
That's
there. Right?
when my feelings, and then I say, "Angie, calm down," you know. And I said, "You know what, the
So,
Chandler family, they can afford it. They should give that back to the Indians. If the Indians don't want to live there, then the Indians should be allowed to do whatever they damn please with it."
Yeah.
And the Beals. The Beal, that Indian agent, literally, he stole it and then sold half of it to the Chandlers.
How would you like to be remembered, and what would you say have been some of your best accomplishments?
Well, my best accomplishments is really, you know, saving the Springs area, which I never thought. I mean, to me, you don't expect it, you know. And I just want to be remembered as I respect everybody, you know, like I don't care what color you are, where you came from, and I just want to be remembered that I wasn't angry.
Yeah.
I wasn't angry, but I'm hurt.
Yeah.
I'm hurt inside.
Right.
And when the Beal, the El Tejon property, I wasn't really angry. It's more of a hurt, but hurt sometimes comes out like
yeah.
anger.
Yeah.
But it's really not anger, it's a hurt.
Yeah.
How could they do that to us? How could they treat us like that?
Continuously.
Yeah. And so,
Looking towards the future and future generations, like if you had a magic wand or if you knew your prayers would be answered, what are some of your hopes and prayers for your family or for the Tongva people and just the land in general, just the west side in general?
my thing is, we bought back the land that was stolen from us, right? We're property owners. Worked hard. Hard. It didn't come easy. And we bought back the land that was stolen us. For instance, I have property in Santa Monica. But you know what? They're older apartments. I keep them. They're kept up very nice. I don't know if you know where they're at.
Yeah, I think you mentioned them before.
And Santa Monica would like me out of there. I'm having a roof put on. They said, that roof you have you have to replace the whole roof. You know how much it's costing me? $35,000.
Oh, wow.
Because you know what? Santa Monica doesn't want me in there. They want big condos because it's more money in their pocket.
So
but you know what? I tell my grandchildren or any Mexican that I know that has land here, don't sell it.
Yeah.
Don't sell it. If you have to scrub floors to keep it, to pay the taxes, keep it. In my trust, I have my family. They can't sell it. If they want to sell it, they have to offer it to somebody else in the family. They get first choice. Don't sell it.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of the Mexican families in the Sawtell and Santa Monica area did, is they saw that cash, but then once it's done, they realize they can't buy around here, so they had to go to the boonies, San Bernardino or wherever. On the west side of Wish, you know, what has bothered me is I wish that community awareness would come back, you know, where all the minority families, you know, I was an Indian, but I knew the Mexican families. I knew all the families that went to St. Monica's. We knew each other. We respected one another. You know, yeah, I know them. In fact, I told Miguel, I think I remember your grandmother. I think she was a friend of my cousin's. You know, they knew each other. They were from Venice, but we were from Sawtell. But we, you know, you knew of them.
Yeah.
And I was telling Miguel, you know, there used to be a big hotel. It was called the Chase Hotel on the beach. And if a Latino got married, it was open. It was right next, not right next to the pier, but you know, the parking lot is a little further down.
Was it the Santa Monica Pier or the
Santa Monica, where,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
not the Venice Pier, Santa Monica
Okay.
Pier. Look it up, the Chase Hotel. I'm sure they have records on it. And the Latinos would, you know, have their after they got married, because they had big weddings. You know, they'd have like, I don't know, 8 or 10 maids of honor, and you know, they'd go way out, all out, and they would have mariachis, and then they'd have a rock band. Families, you know, couples from Venice would go from Santa Monica, from the Sawtell. There weren't any fights. There weren't any gun shootings or anything. Everybody, you know, although you didn't mix, but you didn't fight.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one time. See, we were very reserved, conservative. We were different. I think my mother might have have Judía blood.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we were a little different. So I remember Julie Sanchez says, "Hey, Fats Domino is going to be at the Santa Monica Pier. You want to go?" I said, "My parents won't let me go." She says, "Well, tell them you're with me and we're going to go." I don't know. So I go with Julie. She had a car, right? We don't have a car. I don't have a car. Too poor. So I go with Julie and we drive to Santa Monica Pier, and old Fats Domino's playing the piano. And we walk in there, and she was just as square as I was. You know, we're not vatas or anything. Yeah. We're like, so we walk in, and I couldn't believe these white girls dancing the dirty boogie with African American guys. And the cops, and to us, we're like.
And how old were you?
I was about 16. I would think I was just 16, because Julie had just gotten her car and the license. And then, and we weren't used to this. And the cops would have to go in and break them up, you know, because it got pretty bad.
Yeah.
And we're like, God, this is the way the other half lives. And then I remember there was I remember he was Fats playing the piano. And then there was a fight. And we got so scared because some guy had a knife, but nothing really happened to it. But the cops broke it up before it got fight. But these guys weren't even from the area. I think they were from East LA someplace. They came out to see Fats Domino. Yeah. You know, after that we got scared. We never went to another concert, because they used to have them at the Santa Monica Pier. There was a Santa Monica Ballroom, it was called.
I said, if there's like a mission or or projects that you think Native activists, future Native activists need to focus on, what would they be?
Well, the thing that I think we should do is be proud of your culture. Don't let it be erased. You know, a lot of you Mexicans have let your culture erase, the ranchero part of the history, the ranchos. Don't let them erase it. You know, other groups, they talk about how they were slaves, how they were killed. I said, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
hey, let's talk about how we lost our lands. Let's talk about how we were used as slaves. You Latinos have a lot. I'm not talking about the new immigrants. I'm talking about the old families.
Yeah.
You have a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah.
Things happened. You went through a lot too.
Yeah.
Don't think you didn't.
Yeah.
And-
that's part of the that's part of the motivation for.
Yeah. So I say to the young people, don't forget your history. You know, like I say, you don't have to be angry, but don't let other ethnic groups come here and overpower you and erase your history and let you on the bottom of the totem pole. You should be on top. You were here first.
Right.
You know, my dad drank a lot, but you know, and when he would drink, he would talk. And he'd say, those blankety blanks, I know, you know, he had a terrible, he'd say, those blankety blanks, I know who I am, and I know where I came from, and those blankety blanks, they came and they put up the border and they said, now you are Native American. Those blankety blanks, this was all Mexico. I'm a Mexican. When he'd get drunk, that's what he would say.
Yeah.
I'm a Mexican. This was all Mexico.
Yeah.
And you know what? He was right.
Yeah.
That's what he'd say when he was drunk. But you stop and think about it. Yeah, the United States government put up the border. We ended up on this side of the border. And they said, you know, so when my dad would get those blankety blanks.
That's part of the problem too, right? We're so strong that we don't like to complain and we bottle stuff in. We don't like to vote.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so we're on one hand it keeps us strong. On the other hand, you know, we don't talk about it, so our kids forget, and you know the next generations forget. So we're so strong, we keep it bottled in. You know.
Yeah, and see, my dad kept a lot bottled in, a lot. I mean, there's stories that I can't even. But and my mother, I think, kept a lot bottled in because she was something else. But you know, I like everybody. You know, I don't distinguish. Or you're black, or you're Asian, or you're Jewish. You know, people are people. You know, there's good and bad and everything. And I like people. The community should always remember that the Springs, that was a rancho at one time. And you know, most of these rancheros came from Sonora, Mexico, the majority of them. And you know, they want to be Spanish. They do have Spanish blood, but you know what? They're intermarried with us. There were no women here. You know, a lot of them don't deny it, but that's just the way it is, you know. But I'm more interested in the Latinos and the Native Americans remembering their California history. I'm not talking about the Mexican history.
Yeah.
I'm talking about this history right here where we live today. And we all have stories. I tell the kids, keep a journal. If your grandmother tells you anything, write it down, keep it.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell my kids. Just always remember where you come from. Because my granddaughters went to school, to a Mexican-American school in Puerto Vallarta. Their father's Mexican.
Right.
So they're bilingual, but they went to one of the top schools there, so they speak it very, very well, where I didn't speak any Spanish at one time. And I've learned it, but at one time I didn't speak any Spanish.
Well, thank you, Angie, for your time. There's so much more I want to ask you. We'll save for the next video.